Hello friends, welcome back to my channel for this video, top tips for new doctors. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I really appreciate it, and leave me a comment if you find any of these tips useful. I always love hearing from you. So here are my top tips. I'm really excited to share them with you. Okay, so here we are. I've literally just finished foundation, so I'm sharing with you everything I've learnt. I very much wanted to capture some of these tips on the bounce, as it were, in the wild, as I thought of them. So I'll be sharing these tips as I kind of move through life and as I finish the end of my foundation, actually, and I'm doing locums and things like that. So as I'm working, I'm sharing them with you. How do I refer to a senior well? So key to calling a registrar and making sure that they get the correct information is having a proper structure in mind. The one I like to use is SBAR, so that's situation, background, assessment and recommendation. So I would always start off by introducing who I am and where I'm calling from in case it's an emergency and I get cut off. I like to say exactly what my rank is. SHO isn't ideal because sometimes SHOs have been doctors for 5 years, 7 years if they're trust grades, but you might be an F1 on your first set of nights. So my name is DrLauren-Jane, I'm an F2, I'm calling from Oxton ward. I'm calling about a post-op patient who I'm concerned has delirium and a new sepsis picture. That's your situation. Into background, the patient had an anterior resection 8 days ago, and then you're going to go into what's happened since then, what's the past medical history. They've got type 2 diabetes mellitus, background of ischemic heart disease. You know, if there's any collateral history, put that in there. But remember, you want to be succinct. In assessment, you're going to give them what you've done, what does the patient look like now. So your A to E, all of those observations. So I feel that the patient is alert, they're confused but orientated, they've got good colour, airway is patent. Go through, make sure you highlight anything that you're concerned about. So I'm extra concerned about this patient because they're tachycardic or at 120 or the blood pressure is low. In situation, you could also add the news score in there. So you could say, I'm concerned about this patient who has sepsis and delirium. They're currently scoring a 7. So your registrar is aware of that at the start of the conversation, if you like. But if you don't, make sure you include it in this section if they're scoring. And you can include any recent labs. So white cells have been climbing for the last few days. They're now this. And then we're going to go down into recommendation. So this is what you want from your registrar, but before I do that, I usually like to tell them what I've done for the patient. So we're talking about things like, I've started a sepsis 6 for this patient, the blood gas came back as this, the lactate is this, I've made sure that there are 2 wide bore cannula in and they are both flushing. I've bumped them up to whatever obs you want to bump them up to, hourly obs, 15-minute obs. It depends on obviously what's going on. This is what, you know, the ECG said, or that I've asked the nurses, they're doing the ECG now. And then after you've done all that, then I would say, I'm just calling to make you aware of this patient. Their news has now come down to 2. Is there anything else that you'd like me to do? If you feel that you don't need any, because obviously we need to escalate. You know, if someone's scoring, we need to escalate to our seniors, but sometimes they don't necessarily need to attend, and often I like to leave that decision to them. So I'd say, this is what's happened, this is what I've done. They're now stable, their heart rate is now this, it's come down, news is now 2, and the registrar might say, thank you for that. Make sure you go and add in a urine dip, make sure those cultures have gone down to the lab and they've definitely had them or whatever. Thanks for letting me know, and I'll keep an eye on the patient. Or it might be a case where you are desperately concerned about the patient, and in recommendation then you would want to say, I would kindly like for you to come and see this patient right now. So it's important for you to make that differentiation when you are having this conversation with the registrar. In your A to E, it can be, if you're concerned, it can be really brief. So you could just say, I would like for you to come and assess this patient yourself, if that's okay right now, because I am concerned for the reasons I've stated above. So SBAR is a really useful tool. It helps your seniors know the clinical picture as it is, what you've done and why they need to attend. Hopefully it should give you less fear about calling them because you have this structure. There will be things that you forget, especially when you're junior, and they might say to you, oh, what was the lactate, or, you know, what was the chromosteric reflex present. If you don't know, if you haven't done it, don't make it up. You think that's a weird thing for me to say, but I have seen it. I have seen people saying, yes, this has been done when it hasn't. Just, if you don't know, say to your registrar, I'm really sorry, I haven't checked that yet, or that completely slipped my mind to check. And then go and check it, go and do it. Say, I'll go and get that information for you now if you like, and then I'll call you back when I've got it. So that's how to do an S-bar, and a really useful tool. If you want, take a second just to write it down before you call the reg, and I think you'll find that helpful. Top tips for on-calls. So one of the first things that you should do when you show up to an on-call as an F1 is ask who your F2 is. So often you won't have an F2 on the same ward as you. Often they'll be covering a different ward. But often in many hospitals, sometimes there will be an F2 that is on your service. So, you know, general medicine, general surgery, something like that. They're not your immediate superior. They're not covering the same wards as you, but they are on the same service. So the rota, for the reasons above, the rota coordinators, the on-call coordinators don't tell you that they're there because you're not directly working with them. But actually, they are someone that's on your service. So what you can do is ask to be put in contact with them at the start of an on-call shift. And if you have a query, something that you're not sure about that doesn't feel big enough to ask the med reg or your surgical reg, whoever's, you know, your direct superior, just having the number of the F2 and saying, hey, where are you? Can I pop across and just ask you about this? I haven't done a catheter in a while. Would you mind coming and showing me if you have time? Or maybe could you have a look at this cannula? Or even having someone to have your breaks with can be really, really useful. So it's worth, when you just turn up to your on-call shift, say, is there an F2 around? And introduce yourself to them early. And if you need them, you need them. And if you don't, you don't. What can you do to help make your life easier once you're working on the wards? This is a big one. Be useful and helpful and respectful to the nurses. So nurses know their patients and they know their specialities. So if you are on urology and you are struggling with a catheter, the person to ask is the nurses, and they will go out of their way to help you with things like finding the stuff or helping you with procedures that they do themselves or whatever. You know, helping you navigate your way around the procedures of the hospital. They will do all of that for you as long as you are respectful and helpful to them. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors aren't that respectful to the nurses, especially incoming F1s. They can occasionally think they know more than the nurses, try and put the nurses in their place. It's just not helpful, and actually can increase your workload if the nurses feel like they're not going to go out of their way to help you. You need their help. It will make a massive impact on your life. There have been so many nights where I've struggled overnight in terms of just not being able to get a break or whatever, and a nurse has bought me a cup of tea and a biscuit, and I cannot tell you how much of a difference it makes. Sorry, this is my cat. I'm not going to edit that out, I don't think, because he's good. On to my next tip. You will often hear, you know, all these kinds of stories about registrars, and, you know, the thing is it's 3 a.m. and your registrar is, if you've got a surgical registrar, they're in bed or whatever, or maybe it's a grumpy med reg who's across hospital and you think doesn't want to hear from you. Always call them, even if it's a stupid thing, even if it's a silly thing, even if they are really kind of, you know, they're talking to you on the phone and they're, you know, sort of like, you didn't need to call me about this, just call. If you are in doubt and you don't know something and you're concerned about it, always double check, always get them out of bed. And then as you get more experience, you need to do that kind of thing less. But, you know, if it's a patient safety issue and you're concerned about something doesn't feel right, or you don't know something, ask the question. So my last top tip, you know what I'm going to say, probably make sure you take your breaks. So this is something that is it is easier said than done, and I did an on-call only a few weeks ago and I really struggled to get a break. But it is a patient safety issue, because if you are hungry, tired, overworked, you are not thinking clearly, you are not working at your best. In my hospital, everything is run through smartphones. All the jobs for the wards come through smartphones. It's totally okay to put yourself, so we can mark ourselves on a break, which means if anything urgent comes through, that they can redirect you to a different doctor. If you don't have that system, talk to your on-call coordinator about how that can be managed. But please do find out what breaks you're entitled to. It's worth investing in the mess for this reason, if it costs money in your trust, which it does in mine, because it gives you somewhere to go, and actually you can talk to other doctors. And sometimes I think you just need that in the middle of a shift, is just perhaps a little bit of chat about your impending RCS examination or whatever. So I hope that this video has been useful to you. Please let me know in the comments if you've got any questions or any questions that I can ask you. Sorry, I'm wandering around. I'm about to have a barbecue and I'm trying to work out exactly what I need to do, and what I need to be doing is not vlogging and more preparing. So all right, thank you so much. Please leave me your comments and your questions. Thank you so much.